Hi, my name's Steve, and welcome to Christianity Out Loud. Thanks for watching. Thank you for tuning in, listening to this week's weekly word, wherever you are doing that, YouTube or Rumble or Locals or Spotify or Apple or any of the other various podcasting locations or locations where I'm posting this. So, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Firstly, if you hear what seems to be a whirring just underneath my talking throughout this, I do apologise, but my laptop fan seems to be fairly excited at the moment and is louder than normal. So if you hear that, that's what it is, being picked up through the little Zoom that I'm using. So yeah, I'll try and cut that out when I go and edit it, but if that's what you hear, I do apologise. So, well, the first one of these I covered a bit of lighter content. I looked at some of the content of my book, which is there, still available. Amazon, Westboat Press, any of those retailers. And last week, well, we hit COVID. And that's kind of hard to avoid. It seems that COVID seems to be the dominating topic behind all of these news cycles. So it will be difficult to avoid. But I'd like to try and look at it from possibly a more personal perspective this week, or put a personal perspective on it. So, yeah, the story about the all-boys netball team beating the all-girls netball team to the state title, that will just have to wait for another week. But hey, all in the name of equality. So sometimes you get what you ask for, I guess. So people who live in Queensland cannot return to Queensland unless they're prepared to fly in and then spend 14 days in a hotel quarantining at their own expense. And if you're not from Queensland, you can't come in. That's the end. There's some nuance to that I'm not covering, but fundamentally, that seems to be it. In Western Australia, closed borders, unless you're part of the AFL. Cynicism starts to rise again. So perhaps Joe Hildebrand, or the author of the article that I quoted and cited last week, perhaps he's not wrong. Perhaps he's actually correct. The Federation doesn't seem to be terribly federated at the moment. So because I like doing deep dives, I went to the Australian Human Rights Commission website and I discovered Article 12. And I quote, 1. Everyone lawfully within the territory of a state shall within that territory have the right to liberty of movement and freedom to choose his residence. 2. Everyone shall be free to leave any country, including his own. 3. The above-mentioned rights shall not be subject to any restrictions except those which are provided by law and are necessary to protect national security, public order, public health, or morals, all the rights and freedoms of others, and are consistent with the other rights recognised in the present covenant. 4. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of the right to enter his own country. Now, public health has been the card played by all levels of government at all stages, really, for the past 18 months, a little bit longer. It's funny though, again, I'm not that old yet, but I can't remember a time when the government was so interested in concerning itself with my health. All these rules and regulations put into place for my health. Let me pose this though. Are the police and other government representatives out on our beaches, patrolling our beaches, going to South Bank, handing out sunscreen to people for their own protection? If people aren't wearing sunscreen, are they being forcibly moved into shade? Forcibly covered up with a towel and other clothing? All under the guise of their health? Now I get it, skin cancer isn't contagious, but the principle really is exactly the same. What about smoking? Yes, there are restrictions on smoking on government property, on government buildings, distance away from schools and childcare facilities, and distance away from doors to shopping centres and those sorts of things. But is the government sending police and other representatives out to forcibly remove cigarettes from people's mouths? To force them to wear nicotine patches? No, they're not. And they're not doing that with the knowledge that we have on the detrimental effects of smoking and passive smoking, secondhand smoking. We all know those long-term health effects. That's not really up for debate. But the government aren't doing that. They're not out taking cigarettes out of people's mouths and forcing them to wear nicotine patches, all under the guise of, well, it's for your own health. We can encourage people to not smoke through education, through the presentation of long-term health studies about the effects of smoking on lungs, on veins, on throat, mouth, all sorts of respiratory conditions. But it can't be forced. We can't force people to stop doing something like that. Ultimately, micro-level individual behaviour, personal choices, such as the ability to smoke or not, or in effect the ability to use good manners, say, it cannot be mandated. My wife had a good friend pass away on Wednesday, actually, from cardiac arrest, Wednesday evening. And this was a friendship from school. So this relationship had been in the ballpark of 30 years. They'd known each other a long time. And our daughter took this news pretty hard. And she had a great relationship with this person. And she really loved her. And it was mutual. The affection there was mutual. Now what made this a little more difficult from the personal perspective of having faith is that this person's relationship with Jesus, we weren't sure of that. We weren't sure where she stood. The only hope we have from that perspective is the verses of Revelation 20, 11 through 15. And I'll let you go and look them up. But my point here is that until recently, only really recently, there was a cap on the number of people who could attend this funeral. And it's by sheer luck, really, that we live in Queensland and can attend. If we lived in Tweed Heads, one house over the border into New South Wales, we wouldn't be able to attend this funeral. And why not? Because government says so. Do you remember Article 12 from the Australian Human Rights Commission website? I quoted earlier. Well, here's a headline from the 22nd of September. Human Rights Commissioner blasts Queensland's hotel quarantine system and celebrity exemptions. The first sentence. Anastasia Palaszczuk is fighting claims from the human rights watchdog that Queensland's quarantine exemption process favours celebrities over those in need. What was the Premier's response to that, I hear you ask? Well, let me tell you that it was entirely predictable. And I quote, "I reject that completely. I reject that. These people, the people are doing their very best. They are looking at all the compassionate grounds," she said. "It is a very stressful time for all Queenslanders that are separated from family and friends." Now, that comes from the person who imposed a border, 10 kilometre, 5 kilometre, I can't remember exactly what it was. We weren't allowed to progress past that period, that distance from our homes. And if your work was beyond that, well, tough. Well, she saw fit to fly to Japan and propose that Queensland host the Olympic Games. Yeah, and this is also from the person who saw fit to fly in a whole lot of National Rugby League players, wives, families, children, girlfriends, etc. Chartered flight from Sydney up into Queensland whilst maintaining almost a militarised zone for the rest of us down on the Queensland-New South Wales border. Rules for me, not for thee. I'm struggling to find a decision that the government has made over the past 18 months or so. It's brought people together. I really am struggling to find one. Quite the opposite, actually. Yeah, it's funny. I'd never been asked to leave the premises of anywhere before. But I was the other week. I was asked to leave the butcher for not wearing a mask. "We can't serve you," was the words presented to me. I'm not going to name and shame that butcher. That's not what I'm about. And that's not a woe is me. Yeah, believe me, it's not. But I mentioned that to pose the question: Is this the society we want to live in? Is this it? Is this where we want to go? It's already begun. It has already begun. Labels like the unvaccinated. That is such a disingenuous and dishonest use of that term. That is a deliberately divisive tone. And that's media, government alike. They're all playing that same game. And so is anti-vax, for that matter. The majority of people that we see protesting on the streets of, say, Melbourne and Sydney, they're not true anti-vax. Typically the anti-vax community is a small minority of people. I know a few. They're mad. With the greatest of respect to them, they're mad. They're not right. I mentioned last week vaccines are great. They're wonderful. I have the flu vaccine every year. My children are vaccinated. My tetanus is up to date. Vaccines are wonderful. They are a miracle of modern medicine. Vaccines are wonderful. So the true anti-vax crowd, they are a small minority. These protests are not like anti-vax. thereby anti-mandate. And that's a very, very different thing. They are against the choice being removed from the individual. They are against the choice being between someone and their doctor. And that's ultimately what this should be. You want to get vaccinated, you want to go get the COVID vaccine, go for your life. I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying it should be an informed decision that you are making with your doctor. And that's what it should be. We have 1 Thessalonians 5. It tells us to test everything and hold on to what is good. Now that verse specifically refers to prophecies, but can be applied again in the broader sense when seeking what the truth is in all circumstances. Yeah, so we're going to the funeral of a friend this week, and I suppose I should be grateful that the government sees fit to let me attend. I'll post some links below if you'd like to donate to the Prince Charles Hospital Foundation or to the Heart Foundation of Australia. I'm sure they would be greatly appreciative. And I'll leave you with this. And I do hope that somehow some representative of government hears these words from James 3, verses 13 to 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Until next week, God bless.